Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice. And today we're going to have an amazing episode in which we're going to talk about how can AI help you with your customer's journey. Now, there are different challenges per stage. We know that, but today we're going to focus on the common ones. But before we introduce you to our guest today, Naf, how's everything so far in Sydney?
Very good. Thank you, Baron. It's good to be back. I had a nice little break, went to Bali. So, I'm ready to keep this going again. How are you, Baron?
Yeah, all good. I also had really long vacations. I needed them. Enjoying the sun before it leaves, but now we're here and happy to continue on recording with you.
Sounds
And
great.
Nav and our listeners. So today guest is someone who you should definitely follow, and he's always up to date into AI and any technology innovation out there. How can it be integrated to our daily basis as customer success managers? Co-founder of Update AI, he has spent 10 years working for public and private SaaS companies doing sales, operations, enablement, and customer success as well. Additionally, he is an author of an ebook called Chat GPT for Customer Success and coach at Success Hacker. Mr. Mickey Powell, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for being here, Mickey. Excited to jump into this topic with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Mickey, I want to start with the basics. I want to hear your opinion on what should companies consider when starting to think about leveraging AI in their post-sales functions? What are those first thoughts that they should take care of?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've had a lot of leaders asking me that recently. And the approach that I suggest is try to break the problem down into various component parts because AI is very broad. What we do in customer success is very broad. That means that there's way too many potential things we could do. So we need to break it down, figure out where are we going to get the most bang for our buck. So what I've actually been seeing is that for most teams, focusing inward has been the best use of AI technology right now. And by focusing inward, I mean, don't worry about how can we use this to impact our customers directly. What can we do internally, especially in this ever-changing environment where the technology is changing super fast and you're already busy as a leader, as a CSM. So having to keep up with that change is really difficult. I love it, and I'm still finding it difficult to keep up with. So how do we break those down into digestible chunks that we can start to figure out, all right, what's the real root cause problem here? And how could AI and different forms of AI help us with that problem?
I guess that lines up with any sort of new strategy that you try to bring into an organization, I suppose, Mickey, because if you're looking at digital CS, or if you're looking at a CS platform, you still want to start with, what problem are we trying to solve, and then solve for that problem with the right tools. So I guess from your perspective, then AI also falls within that sort of realm where we want to try and figure out what are we trying to actually achieve with AI, and what are the tasks that we're trying to cover off, and what is the ROI, I guess, in doing all of that.
Yeah, there's one important wrinkle that kind of got thrown into all of this, which is that generative AI is a new form of artificial intelligence that we're not used to. And it's based off of language, which it's pretty much the bread and butter of how humans work with each other, as well as how customer success works with internal stakeholders as well as clients. So the way I kind of think about this is a lot of traditional AI, they're very focused tools and they require a high level of expertise, and they also require a lot of data. So that was one of the big challenges in a lot of customer success teams is they actually weren't getting a lot of help from artificial intelligence directly because they weren't producing a mountain of data. Now, products might be using it, giving product recommendations, or Salesforce or companies like that might be using it to enhance the system, the underlying tool. But until Chat GPT, until large language models, there wasn't a tool that really fit with customer success. And that's really what makes me so excited about it, because yes, we need to break it down. We need to understand the ROI, but this fits so naturally into what we do around language that it, unfortunately, it is kind of a feature and a bug. It can apply to so many different places. So it's actually a little bit overwhelming to say, oh, I could use this all over. So, where I'm going to get ROI pretty much anywhere, now where do I get the most and how?
Would you say that understanding and analyzing and even working with AI is a new skill that customer success managers we should start developing
Yeah,
to work
absolutely.
with it?
Yeah. I would even say that working with a tool like AI will help you start to understand more of the world around you. And here's what I mean. When you look at like recommendation systems, and we're all used to it, right? Like Netflix or, hey, you might like this, Amazon, what have you. They're using AI. They're using machine learning under the hood. So we can start to get benefit from that directly, but we need to understand how those systems work. Because if, for instance, let's say your team utilizes a recommendation product, you need to understand, how did it come up with that recommendation? Because we make recommendations to our clients. And when we make a recommendation that they don't understand, what's usually the customer's follow-up question? It's
Totally.
why are you why are you recommending that?
So what I'm hearing is that CSMs don't need to worry about machines taking their jobs, but more so learning how to work with the machines.
Yeah, I'd say you should be looking for areas that, how are they complementary to me and to what I want to accomplish? Especially with Chat GPT, because I gave the example of recommendation systems, but CSMs, and maybe there's a few out there, but I'd venture to say most CSMs do not know how to build a recommendation engine. I don't. But I can use Chat GPT in seconds. So what's the difference between the two? Why is ChatGPT so much different than what we've had for a long time, actually? We've had artificial intelligence for a long time in various forms.
We started using generative AI in our support teams, which has been received quite well. And one of the challenges that we've been running into is making sure that the information that the AI produces is always accurate. And it's interesting because sometimes it just comes up with these answers that don't necessarily align with how the software works. So it takes a lot more work to make sure that it's set up right and that it learns all of the information properly. But once it does get to that point, it seems like it can be a set and forget sort of thing. In terms of, I guess, now what we need to look at next is, as the product evolves, how do we then make sure it's updating its information, and how often we need to do that as well. And we're in beta testing in that stage. But I can see the application across customer success as well, because there's so many questions that are asked of CSMs that take a lot of time to find the information, which if a machine were to do that, would take a lot less time, and the CSMs would be freed up to actually spend more time on value conversations and expansion opportunities and growing their book of business, which is where they should be focusing their time anyway.
Same with the onboarding. As now that we're going to jump into more into the customer journey here, when it comes to the onboarding stage, which is where is the first moment of truth that the customers will have with us, is where we will spend time on understanding the customer's expectations, the customer goals, how they're measured, their business, why they purchase the app. I wanted to ask, because in the onboarding is so important, and if it's not done right, it's not a situation where we want to be in. And when we want to segment our customers, and we have different tiers of customers because we all learn different, one of the challenges is how can we customize our training material for all of the customers that we have? Now, the question that I want to ask here is, how can I help onboard customers that are low touch or digital engagements to have a healthy onboarding without having the need of a dedicated customer, as we do with the enterprise customers, for example?
That is a big problem to solve. It's got a lot of working parts. So let's break it down.
Let's
Why do
go.
we want to do digital low touch onboarding? What's the goal?
I reckon the goal there would be to try and I mean, we've just rolled out a digital CS journey within our framework, and the reason for that was because we were spending about 46% of our capacity on the bottom 10% of our revenue. And so when we look at how much time that takes and how we want to potentially help the customer onboard without taking too much of our capacity, we look at digital onboarding approaches. And we start off pretty simple, right? Just to make sure that the hypothesis is proven, and then we try to look at what the next phase is. And the interesting conversation here would be then how does AI fit into that to be able to mimic an onboarding specialist within the onboarding phase for a customer that is in the digital journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's all within the realm of possibility for sure. But I want to drill down even further. You mentioned 46% on the bottom 10% of revenue. What were some of the main reasons why you were spending so much time with these folks?
It's I think it's mainly because we had defined onboarding as a high touch approach, regardless of what the size of the customer was, and there was only one definition of onboarding ever in the organization. When we look at what we could be potentially doing from an onboarding specialist or a CSM capacity perspective, especially where the growth would be for customers that are larger, that could potentially be buying more functionality and things like that, we think, well, we don't have the time to do that. The other challenge to solve was that we need to do more with less. So in terms of the number of resources that we have in the team, our book of business is ever growing, which is, what a successful company wants to be doing. We get to a point where we hit a threshold and we think, well, this is where we need to try and think about how do we scale this without adding headcount for the sake of adding headcount. And so that's where we thought, okay, let's try and figure out what approaches we can take so that they can focus on the larger organizations where we can get more growth. And for the smaller organizations, how do we make sure that they get a great experience without it being as high touch as it has been in the past?
Yep, that makes sense. So you've got to focus resources where they're going to get the most upside for the business without sacrificing those customers. What does a great onboarding experience look like for those customers, and how is it different than the onboarding experience in terms of the content and how they adopt your platform, not about the other aspects?
So a great onboarding experience, if it's I guess it's always solution dependent. If I were to think about how Dynatrace works, onboarding is just getting them up and running using a platform that's very complicated versus if we look at some of the other solutions out there, it's pretty simple. And so when we look at what a great onboarding experience looks like, we want to try and get them to start using what their value proposition for coming into the market for a solution like that, or even partnering with our solution, was as quickly as possible. So we try to feed them content, and that's where the bulk of the work came in, was to build the content that actually helps them, and then try it out in the market to see if they're responsive and if they're being able to hit their goals with that sort of content. So far, preliminary results are positive, and that everyone's pretty excited to be able to use all of this on their own time. The other thing that we realize is that for smaller organizations, they're a lot more time poor. So us telling them that they have to put aside an hour every week for the next, 6 weeks, was more difficult for them than giving them content that they can use on, whenever they need to, and go back to it to be able to drive the adoption that they need. So they would use the content that they need at the time that they need to be able to then progress through the onboarding journey at their own pace. With large organizations, it's actually, weirdly enough, the flip side. And I've noticed that with a lot of organizations I worked with, most of the larger organizations want somebody to come in, spend 3 hours a week with their team, every week for the next 3 months to make sure that they implement this properly. And I guess it also comes with, how much investment they're putting into this as well. They want to make sure that we reciprocate that. So onboarding, journey, I guess, experience really depends on what the customer wants at that point. And this is where we want to make sure that we're giving them what they need, or what they expect out of us.
Yeah, that's a great finding, that your lowest customers actually, because they're wearing lots of different hats and all of the things that go that happen with smaller companies, it was a better alignment to split them out. So I think that that's awesome. One of the ways that I've seen teams really use ChatGPT and large language models especially is, don't think of it as like, can we put it in right here to be a digital CSM? It actually can help in that entire process. So, number one, breaking down a problem. ChatGPT can actually help you break down a problem. You can say, hey, here's the situation with Dynatrace. We have 46% of our customers only equate for 10% of our revenue, and we're spending 46% of our time with them, but we want to do this. We want to go and allocate those resources to our enterprise clients, but we don't have the content. So you can ask ChatGPT, help me break down this problem. Ask what's the why behind the why behind the why, similar to I did in this conversation, asking multiple layers deep to start to understand the root cause of the problem. ChatGPT is very good at brainstorming, so I would actually suggest you do that. But then you gave a lot of really amazing context. Hey, we need to create content. ChatGPT is very good at creating content, but it's also good at creating plans. It's good at giving you different perspectives. My guess is, if you know some of the personas of those smaller companies, let's say you have a persona that's like very type A, wants to get everything done, and just wants it delivered, like, just give me everything and let me run. And then there's somebody else that's like, no, I need you to kind of like structure this out and guide me along. I understand you can't give me your time. You can actually tell ChatGPT about those personalities, and you can say, help me create this content keeping these people in mind. So you could actually even go deeper and do personalization at the individual level. So you created this base course for this lower segment, right? My guess is underneath that, you have different types of people that do your onboarding, and you could use ChatGPT to replicate your onboarding for those different individuals. So you could be even more personalized in your messaging, in your value propositions, with what you start with, how quickly you move them through, because we all have different paths through learning things, adopting things, the challenges that are going on. And this is simultaneously a way that you can help your clients, but also help yourself. I know it takes about 40 hours, generally speaking, to develop an hour's worth of high quality online learning content. So if you're putting together 3, 4, 5 hours of onboarding material, I definitely caught it when you said that it took a lot of work to build out the content. So that's just another area that ChatGPT can help you give, even given a lot of context that you gave today, to really speed up that process. And by really speed up, I mean reduce it by 65%. It's massive. So like that's why, earlier in the call we said, hey, where should we go? And I'm like, start internally. Operations, content, process building, coaching, learning, development, programs, everything. Because it's the first all-purpose artificial intelligence tool that's accessible to people like us that don't know code. Or at least I guess I shouldn't speak for you, Nav. I don't know any code outside of a little bit of SQL.
Yeah, I'd say I'm in the same boat.
But it's amazing because as we go deeper, like what you did, Mickey, going deeper into the strategy that Nav just explained, you tackle really important parts of the retention part of it. The adoption part of it. After the onboarding, retaining using ChatGPT as well, going through all of those tasks, because as customer success managers, sometimes we have those tasks that are not as value, but they're high volume. And with ChatGPT, you can go deeper into. It's like your assistant that helps you with that.
Yep. That's why the if you've ever played Tetris, I kind of think like ChatGPT is laying down an entire layer instead of like, just dropping one like this. It's laying down an entire layer of value of where it can help you, whether it's drafting a plan, thinking through a problem, talking with one of your personas. Hey, I'm about to get on the fall with the CTO. Here's my plan. Here's the things I'm trying to accomplish. What questions will they have for me?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it because with ChatGPT and tools like that are available to us now, we I think we always try to think so far ahead in terms of how do we put this in front of the customer. But the reality is, there's a lot we can do internally just to drive the way that we work on a day to day. I mean, I've used ChatGPT before. There have been times when I've been time poor and recruiters are reaching out for job descriptions for jobs that they're supposed to be hiring for. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just use ChatGPT to just quickly throw something together with some bullet points, right? And it's a great way to save a lot of time on things that don't really add a lot of value, but just need to get done.
Exactly. And that's unfortunately that's kind of where we're at right now in the evolution of this tool is we're trying to find those edges. Like, okay, I can use it over here, but over there it doesn't work as well. Or over here it takes a lot more hand holding than over here. And that's why like the first big realization I had on getting a lot of value was to actually use it less in the lowest value tasks, but more kind of like in the middle value. Because like if you're a lawyer, you should not be using it to quote case law.
Yeah.
But if we're a customer success manager and we're putting together a success plan and we want some feedback on is this success plan well structured? Am I missing anything? Did I make sure to include, measurable results? Do I have plans for the work streams and the objectives? You can get a lot of really good feedback really quick, and then you can take it even further. So, we started with onboarding, the adoption period, but you can also say, hey, we learned from this client during the onboarding. We want to put together a success plan, but with that success plan, we also want to build some additional personalized content. Let's say, we sit down with them and we're like, all right, you've been through your adoption. We got you up and running. Now this is what the next 6 weeks looks like. And you can use ChatGPT to build that plan to evaluate it yourself, to use ChatGPT to run it by your prospective stakeholders, and then whatever content is needed, whether it's a project plan, a RACI diagram, work streams, email templates, course outlines, all of those things you can generate really quick and get them to something like an 80% done first draft in a matter of minutes.
But do we know with the ChatGPT's APIs right now that are out there? I guess there are some integrations that can be done as well, where we are able to automate stuff to make some things, some tasks that we do manually, even simpler by just everything being done automatically. Because ChatGPT does have some APIs out there. I just don't understand yet how they exactly work. Mickey, Nav, do you know anything about those integrations? How it can be integrated into a CRM, for example?
Yeah. So here at Update, we use ChatGPT in our product. And here's one of the counterintuitive things that I have learned as I've personally learned about the API side of the equation, because I use it as a consumer daily.
Yeah.
We are very used to deterministic products, meaning I press a button and the button does an action and it does it every time. It does the action the exact same way. Very deterministic. If I push a domino over, domino falls. These are not deterministic models. They're generative, meaning more that if there is a likely scenario or likely answer to your question, it's going to give that answer. But as you add more context, like who, what, when, why, where, and constraints, hey, don't do this, make sure you do that,
Yeah.
it goes from the likely answer to generating different branches of answers. So for any query, think about it like pressing of the button. So in the deterministic model, you press the button, it goes forward, does the thing exactly as you thought. In a generative model, you press the button, and one option could be it generates a pen. The next one, it could be it generates a sound, or it generates a poem. That's just an example of just this new paradigm we're in, that we actually don't know exactly what we're going to get out of it. And there's some guardrails we can put in place. There's some things we can do to minimize the variability, but it's very hard to get that variability to zero.
Yeah. Yeah. And also customers are getting smarter as we use AI. They are also using AI on their daily basis, right? And this is where we have to get smart when it comes to communication. And I want to jump into the retention side of things here on the retention stage, because well, companies depend on retaining customers, not only um, having new ones or acquiring new ones, but also retaining them as much as possible. And when it comes to retention, is the stage where we have what we have done before helps us to help the customer or influence the customer on making the decision to renew with us. By then, I will say that they're not going to focus, although it's important, on their past experience, but they're going to focus more on the value, on the future value that we're going to give them. And retention is a job that is done from the beginning, from the stage number one, from the onboarding. Um, is there any way that AI can as well, or any recommendation that you have when it comes to personalizing communication to increase customer satisfaction without leaving the human part behind it?
Yeah. Well, I would actually say that personalizing communication is one way, but I
Yeah.
actually think there's more important ways.
Uh-huh.
Because why, let's break that down. Why do we personalize communication? My impression is we personalize communication so that people will pay attention.
And not make it boring.
Yeah, I mean, but that, I think we're actually saying the same thing. Boring means this isn't relevant to me.
Yeah.
Whatever I believe about the world, this isn't close enough for me to care.
Yeah.
So personalizing information makes it more meaningful. But that's why it's like, okay, we could go deeper on personalization, and we can personalize more than just, an email. We can personalize a strategy. And to personalize a strategy, you're going to have to do a lot of work. You have to do a lot of thinking. You have to know a lot about your customer. So you're right, Bayron. It starts in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, we do with our significant others when you start dating. You start to feel out, how does this person see the world? What matters to them? If I was to build a life with them, would it match the things that I want?
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is actually, I think, undervalued in how it can help us facilitate shared meaning.
I'd love to get to a point where we can use that kind of personalization to have conversations with customers that don't necessarily require a CSM to speak to them. And I think, the more I think about it and the more, I think about the journey to get to that point, the more I realize, that we know very little about what we need to be able to get to that point. And when I think about, even from a persona perspective, right? We do that. But it's so basic in that our onboarding journey kicks off different streams based off of different areas of jobs to be done and what the persona within the organization is. And that's a great start, but getting to the point where we can actually have full-on conversations based off of that as well. I think we've got a lot more data that we need to look at before we know if we're ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we are going to get to a world probably sooner than we all think, where here's my prediction. Here's my bold prediction as we, getting closer to the end of this episode. It's my prediction that sometime in the next 5 years, maybe sooner, probably maybe even 2 years, there will be a product that allows a CSM, like a fine-tuned CSM Chat GPT, not only in the product. So like we're using Riverside right now for our podcasting recording, which is a great product. We use it too. I met their head of success a couple weeks ago. He's awesome. There would be a CSM built in. It would be fine-tuned with all of the information that all of the others have learned. And not only that, it would only be for me. Meaning, when Mickey becomes a customer, Mickey gets a CSM. So let's just call that CSM Baron. And Baron is dedicated to only me. So there's a base level of tuning, like knowledge, that we've given to this digital CSM. And then as we work together over time, Baron learns more and more about my preferences and needs and who I am and what matters to me and who else is in the organization and what matters to them and what is the cause and effect relationship between how we work together.
All the behavior behind it, all the behavior of all the data behind it.
There's a lot of data that is going unused right now, which is the conversations we have with customers.
Yeah, that will make it so easy as well to expand, to offer automatically before even the customer thinking about a need, offering different products based on what their usage and the tenure they have.
Different products, but also I also look at, there's going to be a really amazing, we talked about personalization, which is such a broad term, and I agree with it. But there's also, think about examples, the term example and what the concept means. We usually want to know, when I'm in this situation, what do I do next? Where do I go? And I think AI is scarily close to making language-based recommendations that are highly relevant, highly contextual. So I want you to imagine, you're a user of a product, and it's not just, hey, like chatbot, how do I do this? It's more like, hey, I noticed the last few times you've really been clicking around a lot in this area, and you haven't done a lot of things. We have seen in the past that customers like you, they actually spend time here, and I notice it's Monday, October 2nd, and taxes are due soon, and this is a tax product. Are you getting caught up on something? Can I help you put together a plan? Can I break this task down for you? Which is way more than a chatbot. Like, that's why I actually do want to make a huge distinction that, like, large language models are different than chatbots. Chatbots are fancy IVRs. If when you call into customer service, you like press 1 for this, press 3 for that. Traditional chatbots that have been around for years, that's what they were doing. They were a very, very fancy version of that. Lots of technology and innovation that goes behind it, to be sure. But large language models, and we're still learning this about them, and if you ever want to geek out, there's plenty of great research being done. It's starting, these large language models are starting to get a sense of like the structure of our language and how different sentences and different situations have different meaning. And it does some semblance of reasoning. I think that's what has kind of like made it simultaneously really exciting, but also really scary.
Oh my God. I hope that comes soon. And I hope I'm the one who creates that. Mickey, Nav, thank you very much for your time. It's time to start ending today's episode, in which we talk about some challenges going on in our customers' journey, but also analyzing how the future will look like for us with AI. Last question that I have here, Mickey. What is that you have seen that people are doing wrong with AI?
Good question. I still think we're at the point where a majority of people are not using it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that that's number one, is start using it, start getting used to it. And I am talking specifically about Chat GPT, large language models like Bard or Anthropic's Claude, because things will continue to change. So you'll just be further behind. The second thing, and this is a good cliffhanger for you guys, is if you can afford it, I would suggest paying for the ChatGPT Plus subscription. I know everybody's situation is different. And the reason why I suggest it is they do have an official mobile app for iOS and Android. And on that, you can do voice input. And it's the best I've ever seen anywhere. And here's why it matters. I don't know about you, but I can only type with my thumbs maybe 30 words per minute, give or take. The average human speaks at 150 words per minute. So if you use voice input with ChatGPT, if you're an average person, you're going to 5x your ability to have conversations and to get value out of it. This is now becoming the primary place that I use ChatGPT because they don't have voice to input or voice to text input on the web browser version. So those are the two things I would suggest right now. If you can afford the $20, that's what's required to get access to the things that are gonna help you that I just described. And I say start playing with it because nobody's gonna come up with the be all end all list of things it can do. So you've got to find out what works for you.
Love that idea. If you think about how much a customer success associate costs versus how much ChatGPT listening to everything would cost, I think there's a clear return on investment there.
There definitely
Don't
is.
tell them that because then the prices are going to go up, Nav. All right. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to one of our episodes here at Customer Success Talks. I'm going to end with a really interesting fact from the ebook from Mickey, which is how often do you use a ChatGPT? And Customer Success have says never, 21%, rarely 24%, daily 24% as well, and weekly 31%. So there's a lot of room here to use ChatGPT. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.